Hello everyone, this is Tim, and this video is going to be something that I'm trying to sort of kick my ass in gear here. I've been wanting to do a review of Houses of the Blooded by John Wick for a very long time. I've read over the book a couple times, I've taken a lot of notes, and I sort of realized that I just wasn't starting. I wasn't going to make a video. I was sort of procrastinating, almost just putting it on the back shelf. I'll get to it someday. And the Gentleman Gamer recently said that, you guys should start doing more reviews out there. And I completely agree. The problem is that review videos are a lot harder to do than just me hitting record and spouting off for a while and hope that you guys listen to it. So if you're interested in Houses of the Blooded, I'm going to try to start doing smaller videos talking about individual parts of the game. And maybe by doing that, I'll actually get motivated. I'll do it a little bit at a time instead of having this big daunting book to go through and to explain it to you. So what we're going to talk about today is character creation. And what's kind of cool about this book is that there's these little illustrations at the fronts of the chapters. But I guess other RPG books do as well, but they're simple illustrations, but they're enough to get the job done. There's not a lot of art in this book. That might be something that could be a complaint. I mean, there's something that really like jumps out and grabs you in various parts of the book, but it's an interesting premise. You play a character that's a noble. You're not necessarily a murder hobo running around cleaning out dungeons and killing things. In fact, the game was sort of designed to be almost like an anti D&D, but the way he phrases it, it's almost like he's trying to make a game that doesn't cover the same grounds as, say, like a normal Dungeons and Dragons game or campaign does. So we're going to go step by step and talk about some of the things that's in the game. So he makes a point that you shouldn't be making a character alone. You should be sitting down with a group of friends, talking things over, helping each other out, because various mechanics in the game depend on you having other characters in the loop to be able to get those mechanical benefits. So you use style points, which is sort of the currency in the game, and they flow back and forth from player to player, player to narrator, narrator to player. And there's going to be points moving around the board a lot, the table. I would suggest probably using poker chips for that. But step one is family. It's sort of your character's background, and a lot of it is done randomly with just rolling one die six and seeing what results you get on the table. There is an option to pick these, but I kind of like John Wick's, assertion here that you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family, and it adds a little bit of randomness into the mix. So with family, you roll a d6, find out what house you belong to. There's 6 major houses, and each house is associated with one of the attributes or stats in the games. There is the bear, elk, falcon, fox, serpent, and wolf. And during this whole random process, you have 3 points to move these little random die rolls around to get more of what you're looking for. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. You also roll for both of your parents to see what house they fell into, which of them was the more dominant parent, and what houses you could probably belong to. You either belong to you belong to your father's house or you belong to your mother's house. You roll more dice and find out what sibling you are, like what is your rank in the birth order. And then you roll again and see how many of your siblings are still alive. You might be the only sibling that's left alive, which I think is kind of cool. It just shows that the world is violent, corrupt, and perhaps even you killed your own siblings to, crank yourself up into the order to get what's rightfully yours. The Ven believe that you deserve whatever you can keep and hold on to. So there really isn't a sense of inheritance. So even though you maybe are the last child, it really comes down to whether or not you have the gumption to claim what is yours or to take what is yours, even if that's taking it from somebody else. So we talked about siblings. Then you roll to see what your social standing is for your parents, each one of them. All the characters in this game start out as barons, which are nobles, but there are different ranks. There's counts and marquis that are above you. So depending on what you roll, your parents might be the same social standing as you. They're also barons or they're a little bit higher. You will come up with your name, and the interesting thing about the names is that there's a main family for each of the 6 houses. So your last name is just that. Whatever the main house is for that various house, that's what you pick. There's a secret name that is whispered into your ear at birth. And if anyone finds out the secret name, they have a lot of control over you, especially with sorcery. And the last is like a public name, which is like a first name. Another thing to note about names is that you use your public name and your family name. You keep that secret name to yourself. And then you also say what house you belong to. So if you are, you name your first name, don't name your secret name. Your last name, that's the main family that is the powerhouse of that house. And, I'm of the house of the serpent, for instance. You will also roll for your, the next thing is age. And most characters are going to start out as spring characters, and they break up the lifespan of the Ven into seasons. And it's not necessarily like a season of a year. Like there's spring, summer, fall, and the last is winter or solace. And the Ven do not die, but they go into this cocoon-like state where they dream, and other Ven venerate them. But we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit down the road. Spring characters are generally in the range of 10 years to 19 years of age. So just to give you a vague idea, but the Ven don't really look at age in that way. They look at seasons. So they really do consider you spring, summer, fall, or winter. You're almost into solace. Another step is a spouse and child. Your character is probably married and you probably have offspring. That's another change from like a D&D game where most characters in a D&D game aren't married, but in this system, having a wife is beneficial mechanically as well, not just for the roleplay sake. They can do season actions, which we'll talk about later, where you have these long-term goals. Another thing about this game is time moves quickly. You don't stay stuck at like 25 years of age for the entire campaign. Every sort of adventure or session, maybe even a couple sessions, you have one of those or 2 of those every season. So it's a little bit, I guess, like Pendragon, where time moves quickly and you have to take that into account. You have to make plans. You have to have these season actions ready using your domain, which has, you have a province of up to 10 regions. Each region produces various products. You have to pick which one they're going to produce. Your wife can do an action. You can do an action. You can hire vassals to do actions for you. So there's lots of higher end type choices you have to make as a player while playing this game. And I think that's what's kind of neat about it. I really bought this game because I thought at first that I was going to hack this into like a Game of Thrones type. Basically bring Game of Thrones to Houses of the Blooded. After reading it, I would think that that could still be done, but I think for the flavor of the game, there's lots of setting information and fluff throughout the whole book, and I think you probably should just play it as is. There's lots of detail in here. You can kind of get a little bit lost. I think that's why it intimidated me, because I'm more of a setting lawyer, I guess, where I want to get everything right. But to make a character, you can just follow through this chapter, and it shouldn't be too hard to do that. So you have a spouse and a child. Time ticks by quickly. There's die rolls you can use for this to see, if you're married or not, but it also says you can pick this. Same with the other dice rolls. You can pick these things if you really want to, but like I said, I like that random aspect. You also have a title. Like I said, you start out as a baron or a noble. There are 6 virtues in this game, but you pick one that's your weakness. You also have a virtue that's associated with your house, and you get a +1 to that attribute. If you choose the house's attribute as your weakness, however, you don't get that bonus. And a weakness basically means that you do not have that stat at all. You basically just auto fail every time that comes into question. So if you pick bear's strength, for instance, and you're up to doing something that you need strength for, you're gonna fail. Another thing to think about with this game too, when you're making your character, is that tragedy is probably the #1 theme of the game. There's also romance and vengeance and violence, but tragedy should definitely be the #1 thing you're going for here. So don't be afraid to fail. In fact, the book tries to motivate you to realize that's what you're going for. So you're not necessarily going for the victory or doing very impressive things, but you're trying to make a tragic tale that is going to end in blood, tears, and possibly death if you don't live to ripe old age and become one of the Swaven. This game uses aspects which are pretty well known from Fate and Fate Core, but this was my first exposure to them. I've never actually played a Fate game. I saw one being played at another table at a convention once, where you can tag them, you can invoke them, and you can be compelled to do certain things based on what you pick. But in this game, when you start out, you pick two aspects. And the way they describe them is, if you could come up with two short sentences that describe what your character is like, or what things they can or can't do, mostly what they can do, that's what your aspect should be named. And they give you dice for various things. You can have dice used against you. And like I said, they can be made to make you do certain things as a character. Again, pushing more towards that tragic edge. You also can pick a contact, and a contact should be one of the other characters, the player characters around the table, and there's benefits to that as well. It's easier to trade things with them. You can spend style points, like I said, that's the currency of the game, to help them do certain things, to give them a little boost here and there, to work together, as a, not necessarily as a team, but to get your goals done. Maybe you work together, every season or every other season or so forth to come to a sort of agreement, I guess, as it was. So that's a lot of fun to be able to do that with other player characters. This could be a game I could see that you could sit back a little bit and have player versus player to some degree. Maybe that can bring in some of that tragedy as well. You can betray people. You can set people up and be a good ally for a long time, and then in the end just stab them in the back, on the Senate stairs. There's devotions, and you have so many points to sink into these various Swaben that are they're in this cocoon-like state where they dream. And if you're devoted to their cult, they can perhaps give you information, they can give you various blessings over the years. It really depends on how much time you spend with them, how many ranks you put into the devotions for the various ones. And I kind of like this idea that the Ven, yes, can die by violence, but if they live to ripe old age, they become these, almost like this sort of ancestor worship, the gods of the Ven, but they're more like little gods, which I think is kind of cool. I wish more settings would do that. So you are a noble, and you have a domain, and a domain is sort of this umbrella term that says these are the lands that I control. And in this game, they talk about a province. A province is up to 10 regions that you can control. So your domain could have multiple provinces in it if you play the game long enough and get to that point. You start out and you put 5 points into various regions that can be very different geological, locations that can have different features. You can also put more than one rank in one of these things. So if you wanted to sink all of them into mountains, you could do that, but it's recommended that you spread your points around a little bit so you have a little bit of variety. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. But, depending on what kind of game you might play, maybe that's what you want to do. You also get a castle and a village for free. And so think of a province as something that has 10 slots. And you have to figure out what various, location, like a mountain, a forest, a jungle, a swamp, plus your free castle and village to make up your interesting domain. And it's vague and it's left a little gamey here. And so there's other systems like Birthright that probably go into a lot more detail here. But I kind of like the way they do it. It's easy to figure out, and it also brings in the idea that the Sorcerer Kings, these were these beings that created the Ven as like a slave labor force, and then left. That they also kind of created the world to be dangerous. Shanri is the name of the setting, and it's called the enemy. So the Ven look at the world as something that's trying to kill them, and it was created by the Sorcerer Kings that didn't treat them very well. So it kind of throws it in there too, and it also says that because they made this world as a big chaotic mess, you can have a desert next to the ocean, or a river or a lake, or things that don't necessarily make sense, but in the strange, violent, deadly world of Shanri, it does make sense. You also have 5 points to put into vassals, and vassals are people that can do various season actions for you. You can have a spy network and a highwayman, which is kind of like a knight, and various people that do different things for you. They're very beneficial, and actually, your wife, if you're married, is a free vassal. So think of them as tools that you can use to get your things done. Another thing to think about too with these vassals is that it talks a little bit about um, playing various characters. You can role play those various vassals. That knight that you have out on the road, that person that's working on the castle or fixing something. So you can do a sort of troop style play with this setup, and I think that's very cool. You can play your noble that's staying safe for the most part, and then you have people that perhaps go out and explore various ruins of the Sorcerer Kings to get various old items. To, get things with dealing with sorcery and rituals and things that you want to learn. Sorcery is sort of forbidden for the most part, but there's some people that bend the rules here and there. So that's kind of a neat thing about this setting in the game. You start out with 3 style points, and like I said, this is the currency of the game. You're going to be passing these around a lot. Don't be afraid to spend them because you're going to get them right back. And you have 5 bonus points at the very end of character creation that get you various things that you can't get otherwise, like artifacts or just bonus things here and there. And they add a little bit of flavor to your character and get you started in the right direction. That's pretty much character creation. Like I said, I've been struggling to come up with how I'm going to do these videos, so hopefully this worked out pretty good. If you have any questions, please ask. I will try to find an answer for you. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I'll give it a shot. I want to thank John Wick for making a very cool game. I've been trying to get more into political games like Vampire the Masquerade, A Song of Ice and Fire, and Houses of the Blood is a book that I've wanted to review for a long time. So if you can find it, I'll put a link down below. Maybe you can get a PDF of it. Maybe you can find a hard copy. I don't know. But I recommend it highly.